My brother's wife ignores his kids, but when I took them on trips she demanded I bring her daughter too. Imagine watching your brother turn his back on 3 of his own children just to keep his new wife happy. That's my reality, and the choice I made may have just torn my entire family apart. My brother's wife only takes care of her own daughter and completely ignores his 3 kids from his first marriage. When I started taking them on trips, she got angry and demanded I bring her spoiled daughter too. So, here's my story. I'm a 35-year-old woman who grew up in the Midwest, but for years now I've been living and working abroad. My family has always been working class. We had what we needed, but we were never well off. My childhood memories are simple: a modest home, strict but loving parents, and my older brother Jason, who is now 43. When I was still in high school, Jason married Tiffany. She's now around 40, and to put it bluntly, she was and still is a disaster of a person. Tiffany was the classic hot mess, heavy drinker, constant partier, unpredictable in every way. My brother, shy and a bit of a dweeb, fell for her looks and energy, and that set the stage for years of chaos. Together, they had 3 kids: Jace, now 19, Jeff, 17, and Hannah, 12. Their marriage was falling apart long before Hannah was born, and eventually it ended in divorce. Jason tried to keep things together, but it just wasn't possible. After the divorce, Jason started seeing Jenny, a woman his age who seemed, at first, to be the complete opposite of Tiffany. Jenny wasn't a showstopper, but she was kind, had a good job, and seemed educated and stable. I thought she was a much better match. At the time, custody of the kids was split 50-50. Jason worked long hours while Tiffany, who had been a stay-at-home mom, received child support and alimony. Then Jenny got pregnant. She and Jason married quickly after their daughter Daisy was born, and that's when things really changed. Jenny's transformation. At first, I tried to be understanding. Blending families is never easy, and I knew it would take time. But the moment Daisy entered the picture, Jenny's attitude shifted dramatically. She quit her job, which was fine, but she also declared openly that she was going to be a mom only to her child. And she meant it. Jason was working 70+ hours a week to keep up financially. Jenny's parents were helping them with money, but Jenny had complete control over the household finances and decisions. And she made it crystal clear that her priorities revolved solely around Daisy. The result? Jason, Jenny, and Daisy became their own little perfect family unit. They went to dinners, attended events, took vacations, all without including the older 3 kids. Jace, Jeff, and Hannah were left behind at home, like afterthoughts in their own father's life. I was disgusted. I said so, too, every time I had the chance. But Jason's response was always the same: the divorce broke me. I'll do whatever it takes to keep Jenny happy, as long as the marriage doesn't fall apart. It was infuriating to watch. He had essentially given up on his older kids, and all to keep Jenny satisfied. My attempts to help. Back then, I was younger, poorer, and living overseas. I told myself there wasn't much I could do. I regret that now. Still, I tried where I could. When Jace was old enough to learn to drive, Jenny refused to drive the kids anywhere. So my mom stepped in to teach him, and I bought him a used car. We had to shame Jason into adding him to his insurance, which Jace now pays for himself. The same story played out with Jeff. Both boys share that car and use it to help Hannah too. My wife and I also set up our will so that the 3 older kids are our only beneficiaries. Everything goes to them. We made that decision after discovering that Jason and Jenny planned to leave the bare minimum to Jace, Jeff, and Hannah, with everything else going to Daisy. It was outrageous, and we couldn't stomach the thought of those kids being cut out like that. The trips. About 6 years ago, my wife and I decided we would start taking the older kids on annual trips with us whenever we visited the US. Nothing extravagant, we're child-free, but not billionaires. Just simple things: a week in Florida, Utah, or California. Outdoor adventures, hiking, beaches. The kids loved it. We always timed these trips to overlap with Jason and Jenny's vacations with Daisy, so there would be no conflict. Everyone got their own experience, and it worked. Until this year. The conflict. This year, Jace landed a summer internship, so we had to push our trip to the fall. We chose Maine, to see the colorful autumn leaves. I let Jason know the dates in advance. That's when he dropped the bomb. You need to include Daisy this time. See, Jenny's parents had made some poor investments, and they weren't in a position to bankroll Jason and Jenny's vacations anymore. Their financial help dried up. Jenny herself was now looking for a job, and suddenly their annual perfect family trips were no longer possible. So what was their solution? Push Daisy onto us. If we were taking the older three on a trip, then in their minds, it was only fair that we take Daisy too. And that's where things started spiraling into the ugliest family fight we've had in years. The moment Jason insisted we include Daisy, I felt my blood boil. It wasn't just the request itself, it was why he was making it. For years, Jenny and Jason had happily excluded Jace, Jeff, and Hannah from their vacations, their dinners, their family outings. Now that they couldn't afford their perfect little trips anymore, suddenly Daisy had to be included with us. Suddenly fairness mattered. I couldn't help but laugh at the hypocrisy. But underneath that laughter, there was anger. Daisy. And here's the thing. I feel awful saying this about a child, but Daisy is not easy to be around. She's spoiled. She's mean. She brags about the things she gets that her siblings don't. She once looked me straight in the eye and said, "They're not my siblings. They're Tiffany's kids." She throws tantrums on holidays if she doesn't get more than the others. She's told my wife and me more than once that we're going to hell. To be fair, Jenny's aunt is apparently where she picked that up. But it stung nonetheless. She's messy, entitled, and her mother waits on her hand and foot. To be blunt, Daisy is a brat, the kind of child that makes a week-long road trip feel like a prison sentence. Do I hope she grows out of it? Yes. Kids aren't villains, they can change. But right now? The thought of including her on our trip made my stomach sink. So I told Jason no. Jason's solutions. When I said I couldn't handle all 4 kids, Jason immediately suggested Jenny could come along to help. Absolutely not. The idea of being trapped on a trip with Jenny, the woman who treats my nieces and nephews like second-class citizens, was laughable. His next suggestion? Our mom. This one made me angry. Our mother is in her 70s, about to undergo hip replacement surgery. The last thing she needs is to be dragged along as an unpaid babysitter. Besides, the logistics alone were ridiculous. With all those people, we'd need 2 cars for a road trip. Twice the cost, twice the planning, twice the headaches. And for what? To appease Jenny? To make up for their lost vacation fund? No. The guilt campaign. I knew saying no would spark backlash, but I wasn't prepared for the tidal wave of manipulation that followed. Jason and Jenny started vague posting on social media, hinting about cruel family members who exclude innocent children. Their friends and extended family ate it up, posting comments about how heartless people can be. Even my dad pulled me aside and asked me to reconsider. And then there was my wife. My wife's doubts. One evening, she sat me down. She looked me in the eyes and asked softly, "Are we any better than Jenny if we're favoring some kids over another? When we first started, we were evening things out. But now, aren't we just playing favorites?" Her words stung because I had been asking myself the same thing. On the one hand, I wanted to stick to my guns. Daisy wasn't my responsibility, and frankly, she was difficult. My gut said, take the older 3, period. But Daisy is only 10 years old. She didn't ask to be raised by a manipulative mother. She didn't choose to be spoiled or ignored or coddled. Was I punishing her for Jenny's sins? That question kept me awake at night. The call. Then came the call. It was Jason, and when I picked up, I heard Daisy sobbing on the other end. Through tears, she told me, "I'll be good. I promise I'll be quiet, I won't say anything mean. Please let me come on the trip. I'll show you I can be good. Please don't hate me." My heart cracked in two. She sounded terrified, desperate to prove she wasn't the bad kid her mother had apparently painted her as. I tried to comfort her, telling her both my wife and I loved her very much, and that she wasn't a bad person. But then Jason grabbed the phone and snapped, "See what you've done," before hanging up on me. I stood there frozen, phone in hand, listening to the dead line. The fallout. Afterward, I reached out to my mom, Jace, and Jeff to find out what was going on. That's when I learned the full story. Jenny and Jason had told Daisy she had to choose between vacation and school tuition. With Jenny still unemployed, they couldn't afford both. Daisy chose school. But when Jenny found out we weren't taking Daisy, she twisted the story, telling her daughter she couldn't go because she was bad. That broke me. It was cruel beyond words. Jeff also let slip that Jenny was spiraling. Botox and opioid withdrawal, unstable moods, financial stress. Their house wasn't a disaster zone, but Jenny mostly ignored the older kids, while Jason buried himself in work. Hannah spent most of her summer at her best friend's house. Meanwhile, Daisy was caught in the middle. My dilemma. Now, here I am. I want to stick to my plan and take the older three. They've been through enough, and these trips are something special we've shared for years. But then I hear Daisy's voice in my head, crying, begging, promising to be good. And I can't shake the guilt. Would I be an evil aunt if I left her out? On one hand, she desperately needs at least one adult in her life who doesn't see her as a pawn in a game. On the other, she isn't my responsibility. And I can't invite Jenny along, not in a million years. I feel trapped. Every option feels wrong. And the worst part? I know whichever decision I make could change my relationship with my family forever. What started as a simple family vacation has turned into a battle for the soul of our family, and I'm realizing this decision could haunt me for the rest of my life. The shaming campaign. After Jason hung up on me, Jenny went into full attack mode. Suddenly, there were vague Facebook posts about relatives who exclude innocent children and the cruelty of favoritism. Jenny's friends and extended family piled on, leaving supportive comments about how heartless people can be. Even Jason, who once admitted how broken he felt after his divorce, seemed to join her crusade. Instead of protecting his kids, he was defending Jenny's perfect family image. I ignored the posts. But I won't lie, it stung. Seeing people who didn't know the full story label me as cruel was infuriating. The heartbreak. What gutted me most was Daisy's reaction. My nephews told me that after the phone call, Daisy was crushed. She kept asking them, "Why does Auntie hate me? Why won't she take me too?" And that's when Jeff let something slip. Daisy had overheard Jenny saying she couldn't go on our trip because she was bad. A 10-year-old girl, internalizing that she was being punished for being a bad person. It broke my heart in ways I can't explain. Remembering the good. And here's the thing most people don't realize, Daisy isn't a cartoon villain. Yes, she's spoiled. Yes, she's bratty at times. But she also has a sweet side, one that Jenny smothers whenever it shines through. She's the only grandchild who still sings in the church choir with my mom, even though she doesn't love it. She calls me and my wife every year on our birthdays. When their family dog grew too old to climb the stairs, Daisy dragged her mattress downstairs and slept beside the dog every night until it passed away. Those are not the actions of a heartless child. And remembering those things only made my dilemma heavier. My wife's stand. My wife tried to comfort me, but she was torn too. "I don't like how Jenny manipulates everyone," she said. "But Daisy is still a child. What if this trip is her chance to feel loved, maybe for the first time?" I wanted to agree, but I couldn't stop thinking about logistics, finances, and most of all, Jenny. Because the truth is, taking Daisy on this trip isn't just about Daisy. It's about Jenny inserting herself into every corner of our lives. And I swore long ago I would never let her win like that. The ultimatum. A week later, Jason called again. His tone was cold. "If you don't take Daisy," he said, "then don't bother taking the others either. Family means everyone, or nothing." It felt like a knife to the chest. The older kids had been counting down the days for this trip. They'd packed, planned, even started researching hikes in Maine. And now their father was holding them hostage in some twisted loyalty test. I told him I wouldn't play that game. But deep down, I knew this battle was only getting uglier. Late night thoughts. I lay awake that night replaying Daisy's sobs in my head. "I'll be good. I promise." That's all I could hear. And I couldn't shake the image of her sitting alone in her room, thinking she was hated, thinking she wasn't good enough. At the same time, I pictured Jace and Jeff rolling their eyes, saying, "Don't cave. This trip is ours." And Hannah, sweet Hannah, who already feels like an afterthought in her own home. No matter which choice I made, someone would get hurt. The breaking point. 2 days ago, I received another message from Jason. This time it wasn't vague. "Daisy is devastated. If you exclude her again, don't expect to see any of us ever again. That includes Jace, Jeff, and Hannah. We're a package deal." That was the breaking point. He was willing to use his older kids as bargaining chips just to make Jenny happy. It disgusted me, but it also forced my hand. My choice. I sat down with my wife, and we went over every possibility. Take Daisy, risk chaos on the trip, risk validating Jenny's manipulation, but give Daisy a chance to feel included. Refuse Daisy, keep the tradition alive with the older three, but risk Daisy being scarred even deeper, and possibly losing Jason and the kids altogether. Cancel altogether, no trip, no winners, only heartbreak. None of the options felt right. But I realized something: this was no longer about vacations. It was about drawing a line in the sand, about deciding whether I'd continue letting Jenny dictate what family meant, or whether I'd fight for a version of family that didn't revolve around her. So here I am, plane tickets in hand, bags half packed, staring at my phone. Jason's last message still sits on the screen. Everyone, or no one. Do I let Daisy come, risking everything I've built with the older kids just to prove I'm not the villain Jenny paints me to be? Or do I stand firm, knowing that in the process I might lose all of them forever?